Hi, my name is Aviva. Purim is coming in a few days' time, and everyone's giving a lot of thought to how they're dressing up and who they're giving Mishloach Manot to. And I'd like to take a few minutes of your time to share some ideas that inspire me within Megillat Esther, and I hope they inspire you too. Whenever we read a story in Tanakh and we are introduced to characters, it's always worth looking at whether they are named, how they are named, and whether they have the opportunity to speak or not, whether they are given a voice. In Megillat Esther, let's take a look at two characters, Mordechai and Esther. Mordechai is introduced in chapter 2, verse 5. We are told, "Now there was a Jewish man in the imperial city of Shushan, and his name was Mordechai, son of Yair, son of Shimi, son of Kish, of the tribe of Benjamin. He had been exiled from Jerusalem among the exiles expelled with Yechoniah, king of Yehuda, exiled by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon." We get this lengthy introduction to this individual Mordechai, this Ish, this man, who is the descendant of Yair and Shimi and Kish and the tribe of Benjamin. In contrast, when we introduce to Esther, we are told that Mordechai was the guardian of Hadassah, Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had no father or mother. Initially, we don't get to hear the voice of Esther. We only hear the story really centralized around Mordechai. Esther remains a passive participant. She gets taken by the king's officers to the palace. It even says, when the time came for Esther, daughter of Avichail, Mordechai's uncle, whom Mordechai had adopted as his own child, to come before the king, she did not ask for anything except for what Chag, the king's eunuch, keeper of the woman, told her to bring. Everything happens to Esther. Everything happens around Esther. She is completely passive. There's no active participation on her part, and we get told she's just an individual. She's a beautiful woman, but we don't get told much else besides that. We do get to hear her voice a little bit later in the story, and that's really where she steps up to be the heroine that she is. Later on in chapter 4, when Mordechai comes to her and tells her the terrible decree that has come about with Haman and getting permission from Achashverosh to create this genocide and destroy all the Jewish people, Esther says to him, "I can't go forward. I haven't been called to the king for 30 days, and if I come forward, he's going to kill me." And Mordechai says to her, "Do not imagine that you can escape to the king's palace from the fate of all the Jews, for if you keep your silence at this time, relief and salvation will come forth for the Jews from some other place, but you and your father's house will be lost forever. And who can say, could it not be for just such a time as this that you came into royalty?" Esther sends back to word to Mordechai, and this is the first time we get the quotation marks, the first time that we hear her voice. And what does she start off with? "Go," a command. "Gather all the Jews," another command. "In Shushan, and fast for me." Esther, when she does speak, takes action. She finally decides that her fate is not going to be passive anymore, that she's going to stand up to the opportunity that she has to say yes and do what she needs to do. And she does it by galvanizing the entire Jewish people. Mordechai, up until this point, is really an individual. He's an important individual, and he's there for the people. But we don't really hear him giving instruction to the community and the nation. Esther's the one who does this. And what we really see is her ability to say yes, walk through the door of opportunity and do it. And what really inspires me about this is we've met her. She's beautiful, but we don't hear much else besides that. We don't hear of a legacy or a dynasty that she has descended from. She really is just you or me in the right place at the right time. How often in our own lives do we have opportunities where all we have to do is say yes? It might not seem like massively consequential things happening at the time, but we don't know what the repercussions of it's going to be going forward. Very often people spend their entire lives finding meaning, hoping to make some great mark on the world, waiting for that incredible time where everything's going to fall into place. And maybe that's not what it is. Maybe it's just being at the right place in the right time, being put in the place that we're supposed to be and saying yes. What's incredible is that Esther doesn't just save the Jewish people. There's a hint here also of her saving her face for her tribe, for Benjamin. Mordechai says it to her. He says, "If you keep your silent at this time, relief and salvation will come forth for the Jews from some other place, but you and your father's house will be lost forever." What is Mordechai talking about there? He's saying that if you don't stand up, Hashem will find somebody else to save us. But here you have an opportunity not just to save the Jewish people, but to save face for the tribe of Benjamin. Remember that Esther is the descendant of King Saul. King Saul was royalty too, and he was a great king, but he messes up big time with the story of Amalek, and he leaves the king alive. Here Haman is Amalek too. He's the descendant of Amalek. Esther is the descendant of King Saul. She has an opportunity to rectify the mistake that he makes, and she stands up and she does this. And I hope that you are all inspired this Purim to say yes to the things that you can. Know that you very often are in fact not very often, you are always in the place that you're supposed to be. You are given the opportunities that you're supposed to have. Raise your hand, say yes, and save the world. Purim Sameach.